Vanneveha karmani jijivishe chatam samaha. Evam tvai nanyatosti na karma lipyate naraha. A glorious declaration in the Ishavasya Upanishad. Kurvanneveha karmani jivishe chatam samaha. Our Shastras encourage us to live life fully, celebrate life. Life is to be celebrated. Kurvanneveha karmani jivishe chatam samaha. Live long. Live doing your duty. Live life gloriously. Live. Do not exist. The message is to live, not to exist. Existing is operating with no awareness of our true nature. Existing is to lead life without knowing our true identity. Existing is being driven by our own desires. Existing means all that matters is matter. Existence means when all that matters is the body, which is made up of matter and its pleasures. Living means the values that drive us matter more than the value of what we drive. Existing means the value of what we drive matters than all the other values in life. Talking about driving, we all love cars, don't we? We all love driving. We all want to be drivers, not just driving cars, but we want to drive everything in life, want to be on top of everything. So naturally, we love driving. We love cars. After all, life is a race, isn't it? The car makers know this fact very well. They know that we are all programmed to believe that life is a race. And therefore, they advertise very boldly, you are your car. You are your car. And if we really reflect on the contemporary times, the society we live in, this sloganeering is certainly not far away from truth. After all, one acquires a car and falls in love with it. Or one loves a car and then acquires it. Either way, it happens. The chemistry happens. And then, over a period of time, the car becomes one's prized possession. So it seems a man said, whenever a man opens the door of his car for his wife, there are only two possibilities. Either the car is new or the wife is new. Now, if the man continues to open the door for his wife, even after weeks, months of marriage, then certainly it is love for the car. So as I was saying, with a growing attachment with one's car, one starts to believe and think, I am my car. I am my car, which can be translated into ahankar. Ahankar with a C. Ahankar with a C. Now, we may ask, how is it? It's insane. How can one misidentify oneself with one's car? It's just not possible. It's an exaggeration. Well, we can definitely see through the fallacy of this ahankar with a C. We can definitely see through the fallacy. But whether we like it or not, we are all trapped by the fallacy of ahankar with a K. This is something which we need to definitely understand. Ahankar with a K, the fallacy of ahankar traps us without us even realizing. So what is this ahankar with a K? Ahankar, the Sanskrit word ahankar, the ahankar with a K, stands for the ego, which is nothing but the mind-made pseudo I, which masquerades as the real I. It is an outcome of the misidentification of the Atman with its body. This misidentification results in this creation of the pseudo I. Interestingly, the shortest word and possibly the most used word in English, or for that matter, in any language, its equivalent, I, it is possibly, it embodies, this word I embodies the greatest blunder or the deepest truth, depending on how it is used. And in our daily usage, this word I embodies the primordial error, the misrepresentation of who I am. Because when we use the word I, you're almost always pointing to the body. Therefore, ahankar, the ego, which is the outcome of this misidentification, takes over our life and becomes the driver of whatever we do in our life and living. So taking further the car analogy, imagine somebody is trying to drive forward, but at the same time, pressing the brake all the time. I would say it's very absurd. It's height of absurdity that one is trying to drive forward at the same time keeping one's foot by pressing it on the brake. But whether we like it or not, we always succumb to a similar absurdity. Similar absurdity, which is nothing but when we hold on to what is there in our mind, the mental impurities, the various destructive forces in the mind, which manifest as kama, krodha, lobha, moha, mada, matsarya. Kama, selfish desires; krodha, anger; moha, delusion; mada, egotism; lobha, greed; matsarya, jealousy. When we hold on to these impurities and operate in our lives, it is same as trying to drive by pressing the brake. It's not just going to be a bumpy ride, it's going to be a disastrous ride. Sooner or later, we will possibly come to a screeching standstill, and possibly it will be an accident. Now, somebody knows how to use the brake when, and then also knows to use the accelerator and driving beautifully and accelerating. That may seem great, but it's only that one is driving in the wrong direction, accelerating, going very fast, very steady and fast, but completely in the wrong direction. There is no use. On the other hand, one may want to drive properly and go towards the right direction, but does not know what is the right direction, does not know the route, does not know the map, is completely lost. So we may ask, do these analogies in any way apply to us? The answer is all the time. In our life and living, when we are engaged in racing and chasing material possessions, we also get lost, not knowing our own direction in life. A sense of incompleteness takes over, and we end up leading purposeless lives, completely lost. Life, after all, is not a race from birth to death. So one may say, yes, life is a race, but definitely not birth to death. The race is all about progress. The race is all about possessions, power, name, fame, treasure, and pleasure. But when life becomes just a race after these, one gets blinded to the inexorable ticking of the clock. And sooner or later, one is racing towards the inevitable end. And before one realizes, it's too late. It's too late. And then the realization dawns that an opportunity given was completely bungled, completely misused. Therefore, life is not meant to be a race from birth to death. Life is an opportunity that is designed to be not a race, but is designed as a race from mortality to immortality. A raise an elevation from mortality to immortality, from incompleteness to completeness, from limitations to limitlessness, from a state of pains and pleasures alternating all the time to a state of eternal bliss. So for this elevation, the formula is Karma Yoga, which is the fundamental step. It is the foundation for any spiritual journey. So taking the analogy of the car, Karma Yoga, to put it very simply, is driving the car of life without simultaneously pressing the brake. Karma Yoga is about driving in the right direction, knowing the right direction, and driving in the right direction. Karma Yoga also is about knowing our own true identity. Our own true identity, true nature. Karma Yoga, if we were to define it in a way that we can understand, is nothing but doing our duty, whatever it is, doing our actions, whatever it is, rooted in threefold renunciation. The threefold renunciation becomes the foundation of any action which can be called a duty. The renunciation of doership, kartritva tyaga, renunciation of the egocentric attitude that expresses itself in an arrogant sense of doership. Kartritva tyaga. Kartritva is doership. Tyaga is renunciation. Renunciation of attachment to actions on personal grounds. Mamata tyaga. And the third renunciation, renunciation of attachment to the fruits of action. Phala tyaga. Therefore, simply put, any action, when it is rooted in this threefold tyaga, kartritva tyaga, mamata tyaga, phala tyaga, becomes karma yoga. Renunciation of doership, renunciation of attachment to action on personal grounds, and renunciation of attachment to the fruits of action. So, renunciation of attachment to fruits of action implies I accept all the results as they come without any struggle. Acceptance of results without any struggle and taking responsibility without any blame game. Renunciation of attachment to action on personal grounds implies I recognize the contribution of known and unknown factors to my own success. Renunciation of doership implies I transform into an able instrument of Bhagavan. So therefore, when any action, any duty is performed with these three elements in place, which is acceptance of results without any struggle and taking responsibility at the same time without any blame game, recognizing the contribution of several factors, known and unknown, to the result of every action, and transforming into an instrument of Krishna. Now, to transform into Bhagavan's instrument as part of Akartritva Anusandhana, this is what Gita talks about. Akartritva Anusandhana. Akartritva, non-doership, Anusandhana, practice. In order for me to become instrument of Krishna, which is a process, this is a journey. The first and foremost step as part of the practice of Karma Yoga, the first step entails that I recognize that me and my instrument, which is my body, are distinct and different. Not only that, I also recognize that I am not only my body, I am not only the car that I drive, I am also not the driver. So this becomes a little difficult to understand. I am not the car is very clear. Me and my car are distinct and different. The car is a vehicle. It's an instrument. And therefore, I am the driver. I am distinct and different from the car. Similarly, the body is different. The Atman is different. Who am I? Ado nityah shasvatoyam purano nahanyate hanyamane sharire. I am the indwelling Atman, the eternally blissful Atman, distinct and different from my own embodiment. Now, when it comes to the practice of akartritva anusandhana, which is non-doership, Karma Yoga entails that we perform the action by ascribing doership to the body. So the question to ask is, am I really a doer or I am not the doer? Now, if the body is the doer, then why should I experience the outcomes of any action that is done by the body? So therefore, the question to ask and also the question to understand is, when it comes to doership, Karma Yoga recommends that we ascribe doership. While I am the doer, it is to recognize that my doership is only when I remain associated with this body. As long as I am associated, as long as the Atman is associated with the body, the Atman has doership. And therefore, recognizing this, the Atman has to ascribe doership to the body which is made up of all the Indriyas and the mind. That is why Krishna in the 5th chapter very clearly says, Indriyani indriyateshu vartanta iti dharayan naiva kinchit karomiti. Naiva kinchit karomiti, he says. He says, recognize that you do not perform any actions. You have to complete the sentence there, on your own accord. Why? Because as long as one is embodied, the Atman is embodied, actions are inevitable. And these actions are to be looked upon as the interplay between the sense organs and the sense objects. The Jnanendriyas and Karmendriyas continue to perform actions. Pashyan, Shrinman, Sparshan, Jigran, Ashnan. All these are various actions that the Indriyas perform, Jnanendriyas perform. These, whether we like it or not, the Indriyas, Jnanendriyas, the eye continues to see. The ear, with the ear, the Indriya, we listen. We perform, we taste with the tongue, we touch with the skin. The Panchapranas enable us to sleep, to breathe, unmission, nimission, to close, open the eyelids. And the Karmendriyas perform various kinds of physical activities. Now, all of these are interplay of the sense organs, be it the faculty of perception, the Jnanendriyas, or the faculty of action, the Karmendriyas, interacting with their respective sense objects. So therefore, the actions are being performed. The Atman, which is indwelling in the body, needs to ascribe these actions to all these. Now, taking the car analogy helps us to understand this very well. Otherwise, it may look a little overwhelming what Krishna is trying to say. Because when Krishna says all actions are interplay between the Jnanendriyas and the Karmendriyas and the sense objects, and the Atman has to ascribe doership, it looks very profound statement, but possibly very difficult to understand. Now, taking the car analogy, now I'm driving the car. Now I know that the car is different, I am different. This is very clear now. That misidentification is gone. So I am driving the car to reach home. I drive the car, go home. When I reach home, I have to get out of the car. The moment I reach home, I am no longer the driver. Until I reach home, I am the driver. I can't say that I'm going to sit in the car inside the home as well and keep driving. I don't do that. The moment I reach home, it becomes very clear to me that I am not the car, I am also not the driver. Once inside the home, I have no necessity for the car nor for driving. Similarly, until the Atman has reached its home, until the Atman is caught in the cycle of samsara, until the Atman is embodied, the Atman, with its continued association with various kinds of material bodies, to perform actions. The Atman remains a driver with this vehicle called the body, and it has to ascribe. Why it has to ascribe? Because the Atman fundamentally, if it is not associated with the body, is not a driver. So therefore, while living in this very world, in order for the Atman to cultivate detachment from the body, it has to start ascribing doership to the body. That is why Krishna says, Akartritva Anusandhana has to begin first and foremost by recognizing that the Atman who is indwelling in this body has to recognize that various actions are happening. Now, when we look at actions, there are three levels of actions that we need to recognize. On the surface, there are physical reactions happening. Whether I like it or not, my indriyas are open to this world by design. And the stimuli from the external world are bombarding me. Whether I like it or not, the indriyas will dutifully engage with the stimuli. Therefore, at the surface, there are physical reactions. I'm reacting physically to the stimuli coming from the outside world. Now, this physical reaction then slowly progresses into what we can call an emotional activation in the mind. The mind then activates. There is an emotional activation of the desire in the mind, a desire for the stimuli. So this emotional activation then progresses to become a conscious intention. The conscious intention, whether to indulge, whether to engage with the stimuli or not. The moment I recognize these three levels, the moment I recognize that there is a gap between me and my body made up of indriyas, there is a gap between me and my mind, then I can also recognize the three levels of actions happening, and I can ensure that the physical reaction does not progress to become an emotional activation of a desire. And an emotional activation of a desire does not translate into a conscious intention to indulge or engage. The moment I recognize that I am the akarta, I am the karta, observing akartritva, then I can bring in this distance and I can ensure that my conscious intention is exercised with my will. So it is not necessary that I am triggered to react to everything and anything from the external world. I can see something, but whether I consciously intend to engage with that stimuli is up to me. I can see some tasty food, and even if it triggers an emotional activation of a desire for that food, I can still, exercising my will, recognize the distance between the three levels, and consciously intend not to engage with it, and therefore not indulge with it. Indriyani indriyatebhyah vartanta iti dharayan. Brahmanyadaya karmani sangam tyaktva karoti yaha. Beautifully, Krishna gives this example. Brahmanyadaya karmani sangam tyaktva karoti yaha. Lipyate na papani padmapatra ivam bhasa. This is why Krishna, the famous, we all know this, we have heard this. Beautiful example of the drop of water on the lotus leaf. Lotus is taken as an example for many things. Here, Krishna is talking about why akartritva anusandhana. Two questions we may ask. Why akartritva anusandhana? How does it help? Second, if I start practicing ascribing doership to the indriyas, can I still pursue my own desires? Can I do that? No, we always want, is there a shortcut? Is there some other way of fulfilling my desires? Krishna very clearly says, Sangam tyaktva karodiya. Definitely, one has to not only practice akartritva, non-doership, but one also has to start practicing detachment from the results, the fruits of actions, which is nothing but total acceptance of all the results and consequences of all situations and circumstances without any struggle. Because the problem that we have when it comes to, when we talk about attachment to results, the problem that we have is not the result. It is our acceptance or non-acceptance of the result, which creates the problem. And even when we accept it, there is always a struggle, because there is always a gap between my expectation and the outcome. Greater the gap, greater the struggle. And on top of the struggle, we also start looking around to point fingers. The blame game starts. And the blaming is not only others, even including ourselves. So there can be no blaming whatsoever here. Sangam tyaktva. So therefore, Krishna very clearly says, Brahmanyadaya karmani. Brahmanyadaya karmani. Here, Brahman here is Prakriti. Brahman adaya karmani. By ascribing all your actions to the agents of Prakriti, which is nothing but your body, your indriyas, and by practicing non-attachment to the results of your action, lipyate na sapapani. You accrue no sins whatsoever, which means you are getting slowly purified in your mind. Padmapatra imam bhasa. Just like how the lotus does not get drenched in spite of staying in water all the time. That's the beauty. It continues to stay in water, and it could be even muddy waters, but it doesn't get drenched, doesn't get soaked, doesn't get dirtied. Therefore, it is not about escaping material life. It is about escaping the material conception of life. It is about escaping the worldliness. One can remain in the world and not be worldly. Just like the lotus, one can be not soaked in worldliness. So what is the benefit of akartritva anusandhana? Akartritva, non-doership. When I say I am not the car and I am also not the driver, I ascribe the drivership, the doership to my instrument, to my vehicle. It enables me to start developing that non-attachment. Otherwise, it is very difficult to detach we can't detach from our own car, from our own vehicle, how difficult it is to detach from our body. Therefore, this detachment is only possible, and the example that is given, how do I stay detached, is like the lotus. Remain in the muddy waters, remain in this world, continue to do whatever you do, but don't be soaked in worldliness. And only when that happens, Kayena manasa buddhya kevalair indriyairapi, Krishna says. Kayena manasa buddhya kevalair indriyairapi. Yoginaha karma kurvanti sangam tyaktva atma shuddhaye, he says. This is the only way for purification of the mind. Without karma yoga, there cannot be purification of the mind. Bhakti yoga is not possible if it is not preceded by the practice of karma yoga. Because if the mind continues to be impure, bhakti cannot be practiced. Therefore, kayena manasa buddhya kevalair indriyairapi. Kayena manasa buddhya kevalair indriyairapi. The body, the mind, and all the indriyas. Yoginaha karma kurvanti. Who is the yogi here? The karma yogi. The karma yogi continues to do his duty, whatever duty it is, in whatever stage of life he is in, wherever he is, continues to do his duty, continues to perform his actions, knowing that these actions are the interplay of the various sense organs with their sense objects, continues to perform actions with the body and with determination. Kayena manasa buddhya, determination in practicing non-doership. Yoginaha karma kurvanti sangam tyaktva atma shuddhaye. So here we need to understand this importance of the body also. Krishna, yes, very clearly also points out that working for the body is not right. What I mean when I say working for the body means continuously trying to fulfill bodily desires, which will never lead to lasting fulfillment. Then one may think, if one should not work for the body, then do I work against the body? Mortify it, suppress it. That also is counterproductive. Now, once again, taking the car analogy, working for the body means letting the car go whichever way it wants, not really steering it. That is working for the body. You are at the mercy of the car. Working against the body means driving a car forward with reverse gear in place. That is also disastrous, counterproductive. So therefore, working for the body or working against the body, both are counterproductive. Therefore, I should work with the body, which means I should work with the car, use the car. I should know that my car has many functions, many features. I can leverage all the functions of the car to safely drive, to go into the right direction, enjoy the comforts the car gives me, knowing fully well that I'm not the car, I'm only temporarily enjoying this, but I know every feature and functionality of the car. I leverage it for my own benefit to reach the destination on time. So working with the body, kayena manasa buddhya kevalair indriyairapi yoginaha karma kurvanti. I recognize that this body, after all, is a wonderful instrument that Bhagavan has bestowed to me. It's a magical instrument. And therefore, I can use this instrument, this vehicle, to perform the same action, which instead of being binding, can be liberating in nature. The same action which can be binding, the same action which can bind me in samsara, can also liberate me from samsara. So therefore, I recognize the importance, the significance of the body. And when I recognize that, and when I practice the Akartritva Anusandhana also start to gain knowledge. Why? Because now my mind is becoming purer. Sangam Tyatva Atma Shuddhaye. Atma Shuddhi. Atma here is mind. Atma Shuddhaye. Only when my mind starts to become pure, I can start to acquire knowledge. Otherwise, until then, whatever I read and whatever I store in my mind just remains content. It's not knowledge. Because what cannot be applied is of no use. I need to assimilate. And that knowledge has to translate. The knowing has to translate into doing. And only that happens only when the mind starts. Now, when I start purifying my mind through the practice of Akartritva Anusandhana, through the practice of non-doership, the mind starts getting purified and I slowly start to acquire knowledge. As I acquire knowledge, I start to get a lot more clarity on who I am, lot more clarity on my distinct nature, the clarity on the difference between me and my body, between the driver and the car. And then I also start acquiring the desire to experience my own nature. Because now, through the knowledge acquired, now I get to know about the Atman that is dwelling within. Ajo nityaha shashvatoyam purano nahanyate hanyamane sharire. Now, how do I experience that Atman within? Now, I know about the Atman. How do I experience it? I know that being blissful is my nature. Being complete is my nature. Now, how do I experience that bliss? How do I experience that completeness while staying in this very world? While continuing to perform duties that I've always been performing, not packing off and going to Himalayas. Krishna gives a beautiful formula. Tad buddhayaha, tadatmanaha, tad nishtaha, tad parayanaha. Krishna is a master when it comes to building ladders. In the Gita, there are several ladders. This is one such ladder. He is a master to show us how we can take a step-by-step approach. Gachanti apunaravattim jnana nirdhuta kalpashaha, he says. He gives a step-by-step approach, a ladder where we can climb and go on to experience our own true nature, experience the bliss within. Tad buddhayaha, step number 1. Tadatmanaha, step number 2. Tad nishtaha, step number 3. Tad parayanaha, step number 4. When one climbs these 4 steps, Krishna assures, Gachanti apunaravattim. Once you reach there is only going forward, going higher, no coming back. Now we see in the Gita that Krishna enables Arjuna and all of us to keep scaling various peaks, one peak after the other. Only when the peak of Atma Sakshatkara is climbed, then Paramatma Sakshatkara is possible. So therefore, to scale this peak of experiencing our own true nature, Krishna gives these 4 simple steps. Tad buddhayaha. This is about getting our direction right first. Getting our direction right with determination. Direction towards knowing the true nature, knowing our own self, which is within. And to be determined. This is all about taking control of our thoughts. This is what I would like to call moving away from pretending to pretending. Pretending to pretending. Let me explain this. pretending. You all know. But we may not know that most often we lead our lives pretending to be someone who we are not. Because what we are, unfortunately, is dictated and determined by society. I don't lead my life knowing my own authentic self. I play various roles. And in the process of playing various roles, I pretend to be all these roles and I keep rolling without knowing that I am the role player, not the role. Now, pretending is taking control of my thoughts so that I get my direction right. Direction in terms of my journey, my inner journey to discover my nature. How do I take control of my thoughts? By first knowing that there are three important buttons in my own mind. There are three important buttons in our mind. There is a record button, there is a play button, there is a pause button. Unfortunately, if we don't exercise our power over these buttons, the record button automatically records on its own whatever we like or we don't like. All the garbage keeps getting recorded, whether we want or don't want. So we must know when to record, what to record. Most importantly, we must know when to pause. The pause button is very, very important if we have to take control of our thoughts. Pause the self-destructive, impure thoughts. And the play button to play the right thoughts that are recorded. I record what Krishna says in the Gita, and then I should be able to play it back whenever I need it. Moments of crisis. Tad buddhayaha tadatmanaha. Tadatmanaha. Your Atma's mind. Tadatmanaha. Bringing the mind to focus. Focus on what? Focus on the action. The action that is performed. Nothing else. When the focus is only on the action and not on the outcome, then one starts to enjoy the action that is performed. One starts to slowly experience our true nature. The mind is just focusing on the very action, not engaged in analysis paralysis of the outcomes. Tad buddhayaha tadatmanaha tannishtaha. Karma Yoga Nishta continuously contemplates exclusively on the nature of Atma, which is what I would call sowing seeds of abundance in the mind. Always reflecting on the fact that our happiness depends on who we are and not on what we have. Seeds of abundance completely eradicate scarcity in the mind. Contemplate on the blissful nature of the Atman. That is Tannishtaha. Tatparayanaha. Tatparayanaha. The goal becomes very clear. The goal, the fourth step is the goal is the indwelling Atman. The goal is our own nature, which is complete in itself. When the goal becomes clear, then everything that we do does not get distracted. And when we reach that stage, Krishna says, Gachanti apunaravati. One has reached the stage. Jnana nirdhuta kalmashaha. Nirdhuta kalmashaha. One has one's knowledge has become so very expansive. So very expansive. So this is where Krishna gives the example of the expansive of knowledge not only enables one to recognize one's true nature, but also one starts to see the Atman in each and every one, the sameness of the Atman within. This is where he gives that famous example. Vidya Vinaya Sampanne, Brahmane Gavihastini Shricheva Spake Panditaha Samadarshana. Samadarshana, that equality, Samadarshana happens. We can continue to talk about equality at length, but not it's not practical unless and until one starts understanding the Atma Tattva. So therefore, once one reaches the Karma Yoga Nishta, practicing Akartrutva Anusandhana, non-doership, and practicing detachment to the results, reaches that stage of starting to experience one's own Atman, Krishna says, Yehi Samparshaja Bhoga Dukkha Yonaya Yevate. He says, Yehi Samparshaja Bhoga Dukkha Yonava Yevate. He says, he starts to realize that Yehi Samparshaja Bhoga, all the pleasures which are the outcomes of the interaction of the sense objects, sense organs with the sense objects, Dukkha Yonaya Yevate, he says. They are all gateways to sorrow, he says. The pleasure is a gateway to sorrow, he says. Adi Antavantah Kaunteya, Nateshu Ramate Buddha. Adi Antavantah Kaunteya, hey Kaunteya, such pleasures have an Adi and Anta. An Adi and Anta, we not say Adi and Anta, Adi and Anta, because they are very fleeting, transient, temporary pleasures. Nateshu Ramate Buddha. That Karma Yoga Nishta will not indulge, is not carried away by the need to engage in such experience of such pleasures. He says, why? Because he says, Yehi Samparshaja Bhoga Dukkha Yonaya Evate. They are gateways to sorrow. Why? Because these pleasures, which are outcomes of the interplay between the sense organs and the sense objects, are subject to various doshas. Arjava dosha, Rakshana dosha, Kshaya dosha, Hoga dosha, Himsa dosha. 5 doshas. Doshas means defects. So these pleasures are subject to 5 doshas, 5 pleasures, 5 defects. Arjana dosha. Arjana means acquisition. Arjana dosha. In order to, by chasing constantly to acquire possessions, what we end up doing? We end up postponing our happiness. So, these kinds of pleasures, there is Arjana dosha. Because happiness always remains postponed. Tomorrow, I will enjoy life. Tomorrow, I will keep doing everything today. I will be in a state of stress today, but hopefully tomorrow. So this is Arjana dosha. Rakshana dosha. Once I acquire something, once I have a possession, I have to secure it. Because every material possession needs to be secured. Therefore, I am in constant fear. Where is the room for real happiness? I am constantly in fear of losing what I've acquired. Therefore, these pleasures are subject to Rakshana dosha. Kshaya dosha. These pleasures are subject to the famous law of diminishing returns. I always go back to my famous example of Laddu. First Laddu, I am on top of the world. Second Laddu, slowly come down. Third Laddu, I keep falling down. Fourth Laddu, I'm running away. Kshaya dosha. subject to law of diminishing returns. Bhoga dosha, these pleasures are subject to bhoga dosha. What is bhoga dosha? The more I fulfill these desires, the stronger these desires become. It's like adding fuel to the fire. We think once I fulfill, I extinguish the desire. On the contrary, I keep fulfilling, the desire only gets stronger and stronger and stronger. So there is bhoga dosha. And there is himsa dosha. The moment I get carried away to keep fulfilling these desires, to experience these short-lived pleasures, I am blinded to such an extent that whatever comes in the way, I am ready to eliminate. To the extent that I can practice himsa. Himsa of all kinds, not just physical, verbal and mental as well. So therefore, Krishna says, Nateshu ramate buddha. Buddha is one who is wise. A wise man knows that these pleasures, which are outcomes of this interaction between the sense organs and the sense objects, are subject to these 5 doshas. And they are gateways to sorrow. And therefore, a wise man will not engage, will not be carried away. Practicing kartrutva, akartrutva, one reaches that stage where one starts to realize the fallacy, the fragility of life, the fallacy in chasing these material possessions. One starts to journey from a state of unlimited longings for material belongings. One starts to journey towards longing for the unlimited, Krishna, knowing fully well that we only belong to him. And when that happens, Karma Yoga is fructifying and blossoming into Bhakti Yoga. Swadharma Vairagya Sadhya Bhaktiyeka Gocharaha. Karma Yoga, which is the practice of Akartrutva Anusandhana, it is nothing but Kartrutva Thyaga, Mamata Thyaga, Phala Thyaga. When it enables acquisition of knowledge, jnana, complemented by vairagya, detachment, blossoms to bhakti. And that is when one starts to transform into becoming nimitta matra. Therefore, the formula or the Formula 1 for successful driving, for a successful journey of life is very simple. Nimitta matram bhava. Tasmat pamuttishta yasho labhasva. Jitva shatrun bhunksha rajyam samurtham. Mayevete nihatah purvameva. Nimitta matram bhava sabyasachi. Nimitta matram, this formula is again can be realized as a progress, as a ladder, another ladder. First and foremost step is the performance of one's duty as a divine command, which is nothing but Karma Yoga. Duty as a divine command. Duty is ordained. We are duty bound to perform. And obviously that duty has to be rooted in the threefold renunciation. The second step is Viveka and Vairagya. Cultivation of Viveka, discriminative knowledge, and Vairagya, With discriminative knowledge, Vairagya becomes easy. And with Viveka and Vairagya and the practice of Karma Yoga in the form of performing one's duty, Kurvanneveha Karmani Jijivite Chatam Samaha. When one leads a glorious life, living 100 full years, complete years, continuously performing one's duty based on the threefold renunciation, acquiring Viveka and Vairagya, one starts to know that Prakriti is different, Purusha is different. I am the Purusha, the Atman, who is the indweller of my body, which is made of Prakriti. When this jnana further blossoms and then transforms, at the third step is when the transformation happens, where the center of our life and living becomes not the Purusha, but the Purushottama. When the Purushottama, Krishna, becomes the center of our life and living, that is the fulfillment of the sadhana. And that is what Nimitta Matram Bhava stands for. Now, taking once again our car analogy, first and foremost step is to recognize that I am not a car. This is what Shastras call Anahankara. Shastras don't call it, we can call it Anahankara with a C, not a K. But Anahankara in the world of cars with a C is Anahankara, what the Shastras say, with a K, which is removing, eradication of this misidentification with the body, to recognize that I am not the car. After I recognize that I am not the car, I also need to start recognizing that I am not the driver, full-time driver. I'm only a part-time driver. Once I reach home, I don't need to drive. So therefore, I ascribe drivership to the car in the sense that only as long as I have the association with the car, I'm a driver. So therefore, akartritta anusandhana, ascribing drivership to the car. Then once I do that, I continue to drive. I also recognize that there is a navigator and a guide sitting next to me who has been patiently giving me instructions how to navigate. And I keep struggling to drive on the road. And then I realize that I might as well submit myself to the guide and the navigator and allow him to drive while I enjoy the ride. So I delegate the task of driving. Now I get a chauffeur-driven car. Partha Sarathi comes to me and I enjoy. Now the car is so very comfortable. The driver is a supreme skilled driver who knows what the direction, where to go. I have no worries about where to go, how to go. All I need to do is enjoy the ride. Let us continue to contemplate on our Parthasarathi in our own journeys, as we all are driving towards the right direction. May we invite the Parthasarathi to kindly come and take over our cars and start driving to wherever he wants. And let us enjoy the ride, knowing fully well that he shall take us home. Sarvam Sri Krishna Arpanamastu.